What is going on, everybody? How are you guys doing? Welcome back to another ZBrush stream. My name is Ian Robinson. I am ZBrush trainer at Maxon, and we have some good ZBrush stuff happening today. So welcome in, everybody. How's it going? Especially for first times, anybody who's new to my stream, I stream every Wednesday at 10 to noon, going over ZBrush stuff. I usually sculpt a project and kind of break down how I go about it, and it's usually something bizarre like the Santa Cruz Screaming Hand or some anime or some fun stuff. So welcome in, welcome in. Hello, world. Hello, Kyo. What is happening, everybody? Okay, so real quick recap. This project I've actually taken my time and we've gone a lot slower than typical just because I've really wanted to showcase how important it is to actually take your time with a project. So definitely feel free that when you're working as well and you're going over stuff, you don't have to necessarily rush anything. You know, take your time. The only time I say rush is important is when you're actually, like on a job and your boss is like, I need this fast. But outside of that, what is happening? What is happening? Elis, Darpan, welcome in, welcome in. Okay, so today what we're going to be covering is, this is where we left off. So I have the hands, I have the mouth pretty much where I like. Again, we don't have a whole lot of details happening. Not yet, but we have all of our basic shapes that are in, and now we can start moving on to adding in the rest of the elements. With this in particular, we are basically doing like a mummy zombie kind of look to it. So let me actually get my pure ref out if I have it here. I did a stream last week from my house. Let me see if I even have the pure ref, and then we'll go from there. If not, it's not a hard image to look up. I do not have it. That's okay. So we can actually, you know where I do probably have it. Let's come here. Let's go to my, I think I Dropboxed it to myself. Hey, Leonard, Matt, what's happening? Graham? Yeah, fist bumps. Love it. Perfect. No, super happy. I can't speak today. Super excited to have you all here today. Okay, let me see here. Let's see where I have it. My live streams folder, my Santa Cruz Screaming Hat. Aha, here's my pure ref. Let me just download that real fast. 1, 2, 3, and we're done. Let me go ahead and pop that open. There we go. So this is the image. So we have a few things. I saw this. You could see my reflection. I saw this on the back of a car, and I was like, have to sculpt this. This is where this came from, if anybody doesn't know. So, hello. So, I have some typical, like, different wraps or thoughts for wraps, but we're going to go with a fairly simple approach, and then we're going to modify our straps what we need. So the big thing to take away from here is that on the concept, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wraps that kind of look like they're just stacked on each other. And in the 3D worlds, we definitely kind of like joke that 2D artists can just kind of cheat a little bit. But we have to make this kind of seem like it's plausible, right? So paying attention to how some of these wraps are, we're going to kind of do a little bit of prepping to get the basic look, and then we'll modify. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this over here. So it's just kind of floating on my screen. That way we can see it next to our little tank dude. There we go. And now let's go ahead and set this to top. If you don't know, PureRef is a really awesome program. Allows you to do a lot of good stuff. So let's focus on getting the wraps, and then I also want to focus on like getting the bones and stuff in his wrist. And I think this is a good representation of my wrist. It's pretty skinny. So let's do the bones first and the gross stuff, and then let's get the rest in there. So I'm going to use the clay buildups as BCB. And we're going to come in here and start scrubbing along. Also, too, if you don't know, I do take questions, especially ZBrush questions. So feel free to ask about any questions you might have. And I'll try to answer them as best as I can. But I think we're just going to get right into this. So I'm going to want this to be a little bit... I want a cavity that's I'm going to be able to fill in with like just a basic sphere. And I want this to be kind of the bloody bits of his wrist. So we're going to kind of come in here like this. I'm going to expand it up a little bit. And then I'm going to squeeze that in. And I want this just to kind of fill that cavity. Now I made the cavity for my own representation. And then I'm going to split this off. So we're going to go to Subtool. I'm going to go to Split, and we're going to split unmasked points. So my hand is masked, so the unmasked spot will be this guy right here. And we'll go ahead and Alt-tap that. Now we can modify this a little bit more. So for the sake of argument, I'm going to just take the clip curve and I'm going to squish this down. Now, this is a really cool tip with clip curve specifically, is that it is based on intensity. So if I hold Control Shift and I hit the space bar, if you're using the space bar, you'll notice that I can't actually control my intensity, which is why by default it's up here at the top. But a little workaround is press and hold the space bar first, then press and hold Control and Shift, and that will bring up the intensity slider for your clip curve. And if you drop that down just a little bit, come through here and say right there, you'll actually see it's a nice subtle fall off. So it doesn't have to be super intense all the time. You can do a nice little subtle fall off. And let's do something like that. Smooth that down. And now I'll take the move brush and kind of squish this in. And now this is kind of like the little, this is where his hand got chopped off. So we're going to rough this up a bit. And I'm just going to apply some color now. So I'm going to get like a little bit of a deep red color fill that in. And then I'm going to take the clay buildup brush again with alpha 18. And I'm going to carve into this. And then let's Dynamesh it. So let's go to Geometry, Dynamesh. And let's hold our picker and say, okay, that's pretty low resolution. So let's kick that up a bit. There you go. There we go. Get that kind of in there. Now, before we start carving in other stuff, let's go ahead and grab our bones. And all I'm going to do for this is I'm actually going to take a insert cylinder. Actually, nope. I'm going to take a cylinder with no edges. I'm going to drag that in. And I'm actually going to go ahead and modify this color to be kind of a off-white. And what this will do is this will actually be our little bone representation. And same thing, split, unmask points, and then tap down on the keyboard, and this will give us our little bone. And now what we're going to do is size this according. Now the reason why I went with the no edges is because I actually want to modify this myself. So I can take the Z modeler brush, which is ZBM, hover over an edge, insert, and I'll place an edge loop, something like here. So when I mask off with the mask lasso this edge loop, I can actually scale this down. So when I hit D for dynamic, I can have a nice controlled kind of arc. That's kind of what our bones, they kind of make that little bend there. So, all right. Does anybody have plans for Halloween? Any big Halloween fans out there? I definitely am getting excited. I watched an interview with a vampire last night. I loved it. It was awesome. Okay. Now we're going to add some edge loops here. And I'm going to hover over an edge and actually turn to multiple edge loops with keep group. Just going to apply a couple more. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. And then we're actually going to Control D and drag, duplicate that out. Make this one a little bit bigger. So we start getting what we're looking for. Let's rename some of this stuff. I'm going to go with bones. And then we'll call this entrance. Hey, why not? I can't spell. This will be our first Halloween in Brazil, so I don't know what to expect. Oh, that would be cool. All right, yeah. Yeah, new place with new Halloween vibes. Yeah, that reminds me of a time like when I moved into where I'm living currently. The first year of Halloween was really interesting because I love Halloween, but most of my neighbors do not. And I found out I live on a street that actually doesn't really celebrate Halloween, but one block over, and there's tons of people. So it's pretty fascinating. Okay, so these are a little bit too much. That's okay, though. Nobody's going to really see that but me. But now that we have this, We're going to go ahead and divide up a few times. We have dynamic subdivision, so if I hit apply, that's going to give me 3 subdivisions, and I can subdivide a couple more times. Now, this might seem counterintuitive, but this will be for 3D printing. But what I want to do is actually carve a hole into that, and this mesh will start to break a little bit because it's all coming to a point, and I don't want that. So I'm going to Dynamesh it, but I'm going to use the picker again to see what that resolution is and give me something a little bit better, so that this way I can carve in with a little bit more artistic approach. I'll just dive in there real quick. Not looking for anything particular, just getting that in there. What's up, Chris? Professional work, professional artist, professional software, professional. I try. We try to just show our best. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to make this a little bit... This doesn't have to be realistic. We don't have to go nuts with this. But what I like to do is I like to use the standard brush, so B, S, and then T. Those are the keyboard shortcuts for anybody who doesn't know. I'm going to go with spray, and I'm going to go with like this alpha 4. And we're going to up the resolution a little bit. So we're going to go to geometry, Dynamesh, and increase that resolution so that we have enough geometry to capture what we're going for. And now I'm just going to kind of come through here and subtracting and adding some noise, especially around the areas in which the bones are at. Again, we don't have to go super crazy with it. If you want to get realistic and look at some reference on what it would look like with the arm missing, definitely feel free to do that. We don't need to go crazy. It's a little bit of a stylization. So it's a choice, but we will make it look like he doesn't have such thick skin. Reference is always key, especially if you're trying to get a very specific look, but in this case, we're just having fun. So we can put this up like this a little bit. Dynamesh, let's rebuild our surface. Kind of have this come up a little bit. There we go. And now we're not going to go into too much detailing, okay? Because right now we don't need to do that. If we go into detailing right now, it's not going to look super good because the rest of the model isn't detailed either. But what I do like to do is add little markers or little things that tell me this is the direction I want to push my detail. So what I might do is add in little lines like this just to kind of see if maybe the separation will work for me, or if I want it to look funky, or if this at all is just a bad idea, and kind of leave it like that and sit on it for a little bit, just so that at the end of the day I could sit here and say, okay, yeah, that's going to work, or I'll come back to it and be like, I don't know what I was thinking. That was a horrible idea. Why'd you do that? And then just ridicule myself until I change my mind. Hello. Yo, Andrew, what's happening? Years ago, a neighbor asked me to remove a Halloween decoration. He said it was freaking his kids out. Now his kids are grown and always bring how cool the decorations was. Man, that's crazy. That's wild. What was funny was my daughter was getting old enough to start to get into Halloween, and I wanted the ghost girl effect in the window of front of my house. So I ended up putting up a white sheet that covered it, and then a projector that I borrowed from a buddy of mine across the room, and sized it up. And so when the lights went on outside, the projector also came on, and you would just see this ghost girl coming through, and it looked really, really cool. And my daughter went outside. I went to show it to her. I was like, you got to see this. And the first, it was like death showed up, and she was fine with it. But then this ghost girl came on next, and it freaked her out. She ran screaming. And ever since then, when I even think about putting a projector up, this was years ago, and even now, she's just like, don't do it. She hates it so much. So that's like the one decoration I willingly took down. Because, you know, nothing like scaring your own child in the house. All right. I don't know why I did that part right there. Okay. Now let's get to the, all right, the important part. Let's get to the wraps. All right, we have some placeholders. Now you can approach wraps so many ways. But the way I'm thinking about doing it, so I'm going to go ahead and save this right now. And now I'm going to actually save a different iteration. And we're going to call this 04 underscore wrap blockout, or wraps blockout. I do this sometimes just to stay organized, but in case I break something. But you can do wraps a lot. And the way I was contemplating doing it was actually duplicating this model and then working with just the fingers and getting something very similar. You could go with the build a brush approach, but I don't know if I want to do that because this is how I typically go with wraps. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this guy. So first off, this is the main hand. Call that the main hand. And this will be my wraps hand. Okay, if I can spell today. And now we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to solo this out. Now this part is Dynamesh, so we can actually take advantage of this real quick. So let's focus on the fingers. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and take my mask lasso, and I'm going to go ahead and mask off a few parts and get a semi-clean mask and say that's Control W, that's the finger with that poly group. And then we're going to come through, and let's go stroke, lazy mouse, up that. Lazy mouse will give us a cleaner selection. Tap that. We're going to go through this way first. Okay. Gonna hide that. Isolate that guy. Isolate this. Now we're going to come back here. So we're really just going to be taking our time and prepping how we want these to look. There. So now we have a hands with different poly groups. And now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this off. So I'm going to hide that. I have keyboard shortcuts, but if you go to geometry, modified to subtool, split, hidden. I was thinking delete hidden. Now I'll be left with this. So if I come in here and re-Dynamesh this, that'll close my holes, but it changes my groups. So what we actually want to do is under geometry, we're going to go to Dynamesh, and then we're going to say turn on groups, turn blur off, and now we have these sections here. I was projecting live mealworms on my driveway. It gave me the creeps. That is perfect. That's perfect. Leonard, that's perfect. I want to come to your house. That sounds awesome. That sounds wonderful. Okay, now what we're going to do is, based on our reference, these are pretty big wraps. We don't want to go crazy. It's the end part 2, yay! What's up, Empire? How you doing? So we don't want to go too crazy, but what we're going to depend on is slice curve. So I'm going to go ahead and press Control Shift and come on up to the top and hit slice curve. And now what slice curve does is wherever the shadow side falls, that's the side that's going to change into our poly group. And what we want to do is generate some poly groups that are going to have clean edges. And then these will be our wraps. Now, I'm going to follow the contour of the finger to get a decent start. Okay. And now, this is essentially going to be our wraps. Minus this one and minus this one. And this is where we're going to have that. So these will go away. and these will stay. So that's kind of the idea. And we're going to do this to all of them. Okay, so same thing. We're going to come through. Now, if you have, so I just noticed something real quick, right? So if I do this and notice that it's clipping the finger a little bit, that's because when you use the slice curve, it's just doing a straight line. It doesn't matter if you came from all the way over here or if you started from way down here, it's still going to cut in a straight line across, which is why I also hit all the other fingers. So if that happens, what you can do is actually start from below, then double tap Alt, and that will give you a sharp turn. And now when I go ahead, hold spacebar position where I want it to be, let go, now it didn't do that part there. I'm going to go ahead and come through here. Something like this. Something like that. You can also just hide the other stuff you don't want to, and then you can do your straight cuts like this. It's also another way to go about doing that. Cool. Hey, glad to see you too. Yeah, absolutely, Pixel. Welcome in, welcome in. We doing some fun stuff today. Making wraps on the finger. Now that's part, I knew this part was actually going to be a little tedious because I like to just do things a very specific way. So we're just going to go ahead and start cutting through some of this stuff. Actually, so you see here how this actually looks like it's a similar poly group, but it's different. So we can select that, isolate that only, and do something more like that. Just by hitting Control W to change that. Go. We're just repeating this whole process. Go. Here, select that one, make that slightly different. Come through. Isolate that guy, that one, and that one. And again, if things look similar, you can just kind of change that, find something that's a little bit more contrasty. And that'll give us a good starting spot. Good morning, afternoon, evening, the mighty hand. How you doing? Welcome in, welcome in. Awesome to have you here. Just like this. Yes, we are doing hand wraps today. I want to try to get a good chunk of this done if possible. Kind of taking my time with this project a little bit, but as I was saying earlier in the stream, I really just wanted to showcase that, you know, you don't have to rush these projects. You could definitely take your time and just get the result that you're going for. Okay, this is interesting right here. Okay. All right, I see what's happening there. So we'll just add another slice. So that way we can easily isolate that off. Let's make sure that didn't happen with anything else. Yep, it happened down there, but that's okay. We can isolate this one more time. This is why we just kind of double check everything. Yeah, okay. And it also happened here as well. So if you need to get a curve or something, you can go halfway, tap Alt one time, and curve that out if you need to follow any type of mesh flow. There you go. Let's go ahead and do this. Now for this one, we may not need to do it this way, but this is the way I might do it, is I might just go ahead and do this a couple times. Then isolate this, and then we can just go ahead and actually do an auto group by just going polygroups, auto groups. That way we can just isolate this one, and then make that the same. There you go. Hey, from Holland, nice. You're burning those kilowatts. Yeah. What's good, Carmen? Hello from France. Welcome. Hey, Unstable. How you doing? Welcome. I was going to make something similar to this. I guess now I have to think of something else. No, no, come on, Ash. You don't have to. You don't have to do something else. That's something that actually I talk about a lot. You do it the way you do it because we're not going to have the same model. I would love to see what you do. I always encourage that. I've been inspired by a lot of different artists over the years, and you know, I've had artists also come by and be like, "Oh man, you're doing this one thing. I wanted to do that." I'm like, do it. I encourage it, 100%. So, do it. I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to gently nudge you off the cliff to do it. I came into the stream and he made me do it. He's just forcing. There we go. So now these would be my main wraps, right? These would be what I'm looking for. So, but before we get too crazy with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to ZRemesh this to give me something really nice. And all I really want to do is just keep groups. So I'm going to go ahead and save this right now. And then from there, go to save. You got to make a shortcut for auto group. Man, that's why I have, like, when I press 2, I have this mini menu here. I try not to use it when I'm teaching because I want people to know exactly where it's at. But I even here, like, polygroups is set up under the polygroups menu. I try to do that, but I know sometimes that could be confusing. But yeah, keyboard shortcuts or a mini group, yeah, that stuff is always super helpful, right? Okay. Now what I will do though is just to tell ZRemesher that life is okay and you don't have to worry about anything. All these groups that kind of got funky and don't have clean edges, we're going to go ahead and delete those so that we're not telling ZRemesher to try to think too hard. In fact, I'm actually going to delete the tips of the fingers as well. This is just going to give me better results ultimately if I don't have to have ZRemesher try to think of anything else. So under geometry, go ahead and delete hidden. And now from here, I'm just going to go ahead, go to ZRemesher. Now we could do a bunch of stuff with ZRemesher, but I don't believe in overcomplicating ZRemesher. I feel like ZRemesher will work for you when you just have a couple selections. So if I'm going to do keep groups, and I'm also going to turn down smooth groups to 0. Side note, what I might do to benefit myself is go to crease and crease Paul Gabry's. This way our polygroups will be nice and creased. Actually, sorry, my brain is all over the place. The other thing we can do is go to deformation and polish by groups. This will make our groups just a little bit more crisper. I know we use slice curve to have a nice clean slice edge, but if there was any sort of wobbliness or jagginess, polish by groups will clean that up. Now we'll go back to geometry. We'll go to crease our polygroups, go to ZRemesher, smooth groups with smooth groups at 0. This way we don't get a lot of shrinking. And then I'm actually going to start high. I recommend doing this. Sometimes, depending on your scene, you can be like, oh, I think polygroups 2 is going to work. But if it's too low of topology because 2 equals about 2000. If this hand can't hold 2000, then it's just going to break. So sometimes I start with like 10% of what my active points are. So at this point, I have 230,000 active points. So I'm going to start with 20, just so that I have a good spot to start with. And I'm going to go ahead and ZRemesh. Now, I'm not looking to project any history whatsoever. That's not really how I want to do it. I'm just going to be utilizing ZRemesher. So, and actually, that's pretty good for all the ones that I want. I really like how ZBrush more and more encourages you to think like a traditional sculptor, and helps eliminate the technical nuances to doing art on a computer. Hope you guys keep it up. The more traditional, while keeping the upsides of digital, the better. 100% agree. Also, hello from Argentina. Hi, how you doing? Yes, Andres. Yeah, I very much actually. Funny enough, I started. I'm buying some clay soon, and I'm doing some. I'm gonna do some fun little traditional stuff. I want to learn. I want to know if it translates well too. That would be fun. All right, so this is my results, and these are pretty good. You know what, actually? Let me see this real quick. Let's get rid of this guy. I'm going to get rid of the knuckle ones on the bent. Here, here, and here. And here. Here. And here, and here, and here. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of these bent ones. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and just delete hidden. And that is under modified topology, delete hidden. And actually, this is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this. Actually, yeah, I could work with that. What we can do is see if we can go a little lower. So I'm actually going to turn this down to half. And I'm going to go ahead and ZBrush and just see what we get. A little more. A little more. Yes. Look at that. Perfect. Perfect. There we go. Nice. All right, let's save it. We got some really good results. These are really, really clean, and they follow the contour of the mesh, which is super important. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now, from this point forward, I'm going to go ahead and put the wraps in its own folder, and then we're going to discuss how I want to move forward with this. We've only been streaming for like half an hour, so we got time. So here's the thing. Based on the wraps, I also have some reference of some actual hands being wrapped. We can play with a little bit of fun here and there. As long as they look like they belong where they belong, then I won't nitpick it too terribly much. But definitely take your time if you're trying to do something that's supposed to look very precise. But for here, for what we're doing, let's set the main wraps, and then we'll build in other wraps that will look a little bit more authentic as we get closer to it. So let's do this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Geometry, Dynamic Subdivision, turn this on, and I'm going to apply some thickness. I just want to see what this is looking like. That's not too bad. Okay. All right. Let's go to Z plugin. Let's go to Z color. Z color is a wonderful tool to where if you need to grab a color from some sort of reference, you can basically go ahead, grab this here, and look, I'm actually sampling pure ref, and I'm sampling colors from my different ZBrush. So from my pure ref, I can actually come in here and get that, set that color, close this down, and now I have the color that's in the reference, which is cool. And this is actually just a little too thick, so we'll do that. See, from Todd McFarlane Toys XP, for toys and such, a bunch of sculptors there started with wax. It's great for figures, minis, and such, versus weed clay or wet clay. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of toy companies actually still, Sideshow, I know, still uses traditional sculpting techniques too for some pieces. I think some of their elite pieces, I would imagine. So they had a couple YouTube videos that was really cool to watch. Yeah, it is really neat. Okay, we're gonna go in here, scale that up a little bit. Okay, now let's do the wraps that are going to be here. And I'm trying to think of the way I want to do it. I might utilize, how do I want to do this? I might utilize the topology tool instead, or Z-spheres. Ooh, decisions! I think Z-spheres would be cool. Let's do Z-spheres, just because it's something a lot of people don't utilize, and I think it would be a really cool method of approach. So we're going to use Z-spheres because we're cool kids. So let's go insert Z-sphere. And now Z-spheres is, we're going to go ahead and utilize the WER to scale this down. So let's go W. I'm going to shrink this down, and then I'm going to hit W to move this here kind of in the center world. Is there a way to keep multiple curved lines without them disappearing? Yes, actually there is. There's a specific brush that actually would help you out. So if I come here and let's say I pull a curve brush, we actually have a curve multi-tube. And so if I draw a curve out and then I draw a curve out and then I draw a curve out, I'm keeping all of these curves, and then I can adjust each one of these independently. And you can actually attach this to an alpha of sorts. So let's say you wanted square ones. Boop. Go ahead. There's your square ones. If you wanted the circular one, boop. There you go. And it updates all at once. So yes, there is a way to do that. And that would be the way to do it. That would be the easiest way. If you want to build a brush, a custom brush that utilizes that feature, I would just start with that brush. That's literally the easiest way to do that. Let's see. Not gonna lie, kind of digging the polygroup colors. Yeah, the polygroup colors are fun, right? I was the last traditional sculptors in the house of and Team Sideshow. No, really? Now I'm all digital there, but I still do traditional sculpting for some and stuff. Alfred, oh man, that's crazy. That is crazy, man. Well, awesome to have you here. Thank you for being here. That's really cool. Somebody is ready for Halloween. Yeah, of course. Come on. Last thing I sculpted traditionally at Sideshow was the 1:6 scale red skull portraits. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. That's cool. That's really, really cool. Okay. So Z-spheres here. We're going to go to draw. We got to set up a couple things before we can just start tapping along. First things first is we go to adaptive skin and turn density and Dynamesh down to 0 and 1. This will allow us to use actual quads for this. And then from there, we need to go to topology and say edit the topology. You have to be on draw for this or you can't start doing points. And now what I can do is I can literally start drawing out our points. Boop. And then from here, I can start making my wraps very custom. This is also a way to retopologize in ZBrush if you didn't know. Tap off if you want to select a new point. This point to this point to this point. Kind of rotate around. So you can see here now I could just start creating a lot of my own little spots. This way it can just be custom to the work. Hannibal! What's happening, dude? Welcome in, man. Happy to have you here, buddy. Now I can also go and hit W for move, and I can move some of these points. Tap off screen, and then from here go ahead and hit Q to start drawing again. And let's actually just create this point right here. Here and here. So we're going to do a few of these like that. I think that'd be a cool way. I'm just going to make one loop and then I'll like kind of do a weird duplicate stack effect to it. But like for getting under these spots here, this is probably just, this will be a little bit easier and a lot cleaner of an approach. So let's actually come here. Let's tap all this stuff in. Just rotate around. So if anybody's asked how do you retopo in ZBrush, this is literally the way to do it. But we're going to be using it to be making some topology instead. Again, I'm going to hit the W key to move that, hit Q. Come around, rotate. Now I got to make a decision. W. Move that point right there. I find that if you are used to right-clicking when doing this, that actually removes that point. So that's why I'm actually running out here to rotate. Find this to be a little bit easier to make those points. If you need to clear a point for whatever reason, you just alt tap on that point, and that will clear that out. And then from there, because I had a little bit of an overlap, there, come here, and touch there. And if I want to look at this mesh, I'm going to go ahead and hit A for preview, solo this out, and take a look at my mesh and see, okay, yep, got a little bit of points removed here. Not sure what happened. Maybe when I alt deleted it, it just deleted a little bit more than I wanted to. Hit that one more time. Perfect. All right. So that's it. That's perfect, right? And now all I'm going to do is under the adapt skin, going to go make adapt skin. And this is going to make my own individual wrap just like that. You're going to want to make sure you turn off double because it automatically will it'll automatically flip your normals. And if you have something like this where one side is flipped than the other, then I can actually come here. Let's do an auto group. I'll hide this one. Come in here. Looks like it says I have a morph target. Delete the morph target. Auto groups. And now I can come through here. Go to properties. Flip that one time. There we go. Now they're proper facing. So if you ever have that, that's what happens. Now from here, let's go ahead and go to copy. And then we're going to go ahead and paste this in the wraps. So come in here and hit paste. And now I can hide the Z-sphere. And then I can do the same thing, geometry, dynamic subdivision with some thickness. I think I had a 0.015. And now we can start playing with that. Hey, Ian, comics, dude, I have not, man. I have no idea. He's become a piece of shit. Yeah, check out his Instagram. That's all I can say, man. Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, how much proceeding power need for this? How much processing power? Not much. Actually, ZBrush prides itself on the fact that it can actually run on some really simple machines. So you don't need a whole lot. It is CPU driven, so your graphics card doesn't really matter. But you can run ZBrush pretty much on, I don't want to say anything, but pretty much anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't go pull a DOS machine and try to run it. But you know what I mean? Like, it'll run on pretty much anything you throw at it that's modern within the last, I would say, like 5-10 years. Should be able to find. The only thing you'll notice with ZBrush is that the power of the computer will determine how much or how far you can push a sculpt. So, for example, when I was first learning, I was learning on an iMac, and it didn't have a super powerful processor, so I was limited to what the processor could handle. And at that point, I think it was like 8-10 million. But, you know, believe it or not, 8-10 million, that's actually quite a lot. So you'd be surprised what you can do with 8 million. So okay, so with something like this, I'm going to go ahead and isolate this one. Now I'm going to use my control drag trick where I press and hold control. There are no subdivisions on this, so I can drag this out, and then I can kind of scale this down a little bit, rotate this around, and now I can start pushing and pulling this to be right where I want it to be. Maybe this one goes up a little bit like this. Now we want to make them look believable, so we got to make sure that like the proper wraps are on top where they should be. And yeah, maybe this folds in a little bit. Maybe so that maybe this one comes up and tucks underneath because there's a crease there. Right? Also, a really cool trick so you're not masking everything is just go to Brush, go to Auto Masking, and go to Topological, and then go to your polygroups, auto groups, and now you can actually just move the one piece that you're grabbing. So you don't have to constantly be fiddling with which part you're working on. Your hand's so cute, but reference hand's so scary. Yeah, I've been using my own hand for a lot of this. We still have a lot to go. I might do a little bit more off stream to finesse this, just because I'm only on for like 2 hours, and there's a lot that still needs to get done. But you know, because it's a fun personal project, you know, we just take our time with it. We have fun. No need to rush it. Thinking with this one, when I'm thinking, I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to control drag this one up, and I'm going to control this out. I'm going to angle that down. I'm going to have this kind of go underneath his lip. My style explained in one sentence. Move it around until you like it. If anybody's curious. How does he do it? He just moves it. He just moves it. He just bashes clay around, and then eventually he's like, yeah, that looks good. There we go. There we go. Something like that. Okay, I'm going to isolate this one just because this is still getting, it's a little difficult to grab that. Now this is very low, so I'm only able to get so much curvature without subdividing. Now I do have topological on a brush here that I've modified, so I want to move everything in one spot. I'll just turn it off for a second. Just come through here. There we go. Now the trick with sculpting anything is come back here and ask yourself, how does that look? That's important. Is that looking the way you want it to? Does it make sense? These are all things that you need to do. Hello from Jamaica. Welcome in, welcome in. Yeah, memory helps. It's a combination, memory and processing power, and that'll get you there. You could do a lot with a little. What's up, Chris? How would you sculpt a hand that is holding something with fingers touching? I would think of doing the hand in neutral pose and rig it once ZBrush are used, separate subtools, and then merge them. Pixel Falafi? Oh, I don't want to butcher your name. I'm sorry. I'm just going to call you Pixel. There's a couple ways you could do it. That's one way. But for sculptural purposes, which is what I do, and I actually have a video on ZBrush about it. I made a video for the ZBrush Summit last year, which I could pull up, but just to kind of demonstrate it, let's save this real fast. I think I just literally saved, but whatever. I'm going to pull up a tool, and I'm going to go ahead and grab this this Nix humans. That's ship's default. And I'm going to double click on it. Hello, hello. And we're just going to go ahead and focus on the hand today. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the layers that ships with this one because we don't need it. And I literally just want this hand. So boop, 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 boop. Grab that guy. Turn off symmetry. Delete hidden, just so we can focus on the hand itself. And I'm going to go ahead and set this in the center of the screen. And I'm going to delete all the other stuff that's not selected because that's not creepy. I'm going to send this home. We're going to zoom in with F. Okay. So another way to go about doing a pose, and I'm going to go ahead and just turn off all of the groups, and I'm going to go ahead and say apply. I'm going to delete hidden. Okay, because the ZBrush route you would obviously be that you have a nice subdivided surface. But let's say you don't have a nice subdivided surface. One of the ways I like to pose for sculpture is I actually like to use Dynamesh by groups. So what I will do is I will isolate like this hand here. I'm going to go through very much like what you might have seen me do if you were in the stream at the start. And I will isolate where all the knuckles are, all the joints, like this. Yeah, go like this. There we go. Grab that guy. And I'm going to hide all these. And we'll just speed this up for the demonstration purposes. But we're going to come here, grab this guy, hide it. Again, come through here, grab this guy, hide it. Now, when I do this, so I'm just going to do these two fingers right here, okay? When I do this, I'm going to grab this guy right there. That, perfect, okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to Dynamesh with groups on. That's a little low, so we need to find the right resolution. And have Dynamesh with groups on. Turn groups on, Ian. Turn the groups on. Come on, buddy. There you go. And now I get this. And so now, and this is how I pose this hand here. I'm going to isolate this with a mask. I'm going to put the gizmo right in the knuckle of where it bends. And then I will bend this finger where it needs to be. And I'll take the move brush and I'll meet these two in the middle. Because even when you pose, unless you have a really good animated rig with a really good mesh, right? So good mesh, a good rig, everything like that, you're still going to have to clean up your sculpt a little bit. So for Sculpture's approach, this is a way that you can actually come through here and start isolating and positioning it right where you want it to be. You can come in through here and kind of finesse this down. Right? Doop, 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 doop. Something like this. We're obviously going pretty quick. Come through here, grab this guy. A real quick trick so you don't have to grab this mask and then invert is actually just turn the gizmo on and select that gizmo. Or select that piece with the gizmo active and I'll mask off that polygroup. Right? And so then I can get my posing done just like this. Move it into the proper position and rebuild from here. Then when I'm done, let's say I like this. Well, it's terrible, but hopefully you get the idea. Yeah, it's a really terrible example, but hopefully you get the idea. Once I'm here and I'm happy, then I just turn off groups and re-weld that back together, and then I'll have a pose that I can go ahead and just kind of finesse the rest of the way, which is how I ended up doing this ultimately. Now, the other thing that I did too was I made one finger, completely one finger, and then what I did after that was I ultimately took that finger and duplicated it and scaled it down to the appropriate size for the middle, index, and pinky, and then I posed those individually, and then I welded it all together. In fact, actually, my very last stream covers that technique on how I did that. So that's how I would go about doing it. You are absolutely welcome. Hello from India. Welcome, welcome. So when I'm done with my version of this that I was working on, I may send you a copy of it. Oh, that would be awesome, dude. Heck yeah. Tag me in it, anything. That would be really cool. Yes. I made a screaming hand a few months ago. I didn't even try for the reps. Now you can go back and add the wraps. Now you can do it. Okay. I have RGB. Okay. Hold on. Oh. Ah, there it is. I was like, I'm seeing some mesh pop through. So now I can actually go ahead and delete this guy. We don't need it. And now we can start finessing some of this other stuff. Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear this song, but this is one of my favorite tunes on this playlist. All right, let's grab this guy. Let's select these here. Okay. Are these attached in any way? Because if they are, we're just going to go ahead and split hidden. And then we'll bring that back. Yeah, let's just go ahead and merge that back. No, let's not merge that. That's fine. No songs? Oh, I could turn it up a little bit. I've tried to find the right volume, and it doesn't always work. Let me know if that's on. A quick tips for beginner to learn ZBrush. I have a lot for you. That's better? All right, Leo. You got it, man. I got a lot of stuff for you, actually, to learn ZBrush. You're going to, well, hopefully you'll like it. And then we'll get into the wraps. Because ZBrush, super fun, and you guys can jump in it. Real quick. But if, e.g., the individual fingers are touching, won't Dynamesh join them? Well, Dynamesh will not join them if you have groups turned on. So if you have, geometry, let's go back here to this example, back it up real quick. So let's say you're working on your fingers right now and you need to rebuild the geometry and not weld them. By going to Dynamesh and keeping groups on, notice that these two right here are completely smashed into each other. They will not weld together. They only weld together when you turn groups off, and then it recalculates and ignores your groups. With groups turned on, it will always rebuild no matter what the change is, and it'll keep the groups in mind. So even if I do this and rebuild, that's still a separate group, and it's closed. So that is it. Yes, Leo, I'm on everything. I am on everything. You can look up Iris Sculpts. You can look up Ian Robinson. I'm on every platform. I go by Iris Sculpts as my handle. And that just means Ian Robinson Sculpts. That's literally what that name means. Nothing fancy, nothing really technical. It's literally that. Okay. Now let's go ahead and start finalizing some of these wraps here. I'm going to go ahead and mask this off, come through here, and kind of make this a bigger wrap. It will be available to rewatch after the stream ends. The VOD usually takes a little bit to kick on, but it should kick on immediately within an hour max of the stream ending. Okay, now I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to scrub this down just a little bit. Scale this down a little bit. Okay, let's actually just work on this for a second. Isolated. Now, what's interesting too, oh, I forgot. Sorry, I totally didn't mean to ignore your question. How to start beginner in ZBrush. I totally reminded myself. Let me go ahead and save this and let's go ahead and do it. So to start in ZBrush, when you first load ZBrush for the first time, and I'm literally going to just go ahead and just pretend that this isn't here. So let's come here. Let's go switch. Let's clean this out. Let's open up the home page like this. This might be what you enter in when you first start ZBrush. So to start with ZBrush as quickly as possible, the very first thing that you'll do is go ahead and close this down. And you'll have this open. If I hit, this is the light box. There's a button up here, but the comma key on the comma key up here on the keyboard will open and close that. What I tell people who are first new in ZBrush is there are a couple ways to get started, but if you want to just get in and start sculpting immediately, there's this project right here called the default project. Double click this and go ahead and just say no, because it's like, hey, did you want to make any save changes? Immediately, you're given a ball of sphere that is ready to sculpt on. This is how you can start in ZBrush right now. From here, what I recommend beginners do is just kind of learn where things are in the program. So if you go to the right-hand side where this is your tool palette and open up Subtool, this is where your subtools, what we call objects in ZBrush, that's where that will live. And from here, I don't really want you getting too technical, but I want you to come up here to your brushes, and these are all the brushes that ZBrush ships with. In fact, technically, this is only half or a third of the brushes that ship with ZBrush. There are brushes in other places in ZBrush, but these are the main ones. And just start with learning the keyboard shortcuts. So here, if you hit B, that opens up your brush palette, and let's say I want my clay buildup brush. This is all in alphabetical order, but if I know that the brush starts with a C, I can hit C, and that will isolate all of my brushes that have the letter C in it. From there, it will give me a secondary letter. That's my shortcut. So for clay buildup, that's going to be C, B, and then B again. And now, just come in there and start seeing what these brushes do. For every brush that exists in ZBrush, there are counterparts to it, meaning it does both a negative and a positive cut, and sometimes the brush can do special things depending on what you're doing. So to just add clay, you're just going to go ahead and press down. ZBrush works best with a pen pressure, but if you don't, a mouse will be fine for start. If you want to cut into your clay, press and hold Alt, and you can carve into it. So you can literally just build up some clay and then carve underneath it. And this is how you can start doing shapes. So the first thing I recommend is that you basically come through here and just start playing with the brushes. Control Z will actually scrub through this history that exists here on the top. And this is how you could start. So you can come in here and say, yep, I'm going to go ahead and make a hole. Hold Shift to smooth your clay. And you can start sculpting something. Smooth that down a little bit. Carve in there. Maybe get a little bit of a nose built up in there. Smooth that down. You can already start to see that you can get some pretty cool shapes. The other brush I like to introduce is the Move brush, which is B and then hit M for move and then find the Move brush. And you can start pulling some clay and seeing if you can find some shapes that work for you. Something like this. And this is how you start with ZBrush. Once you get comfortable sculpting or trying something out, then from there you can start bringing in other subtools by coming here and hitting Insert and adding in a cylinder. Maybe squish that down a little bit. The gizmo I activated by hitting W on the keyboard, and then I can scale, lengthen, shrink, rotate, and move. And Control Z does all of that. And so this is how you would start. So I would say go in there and start playing around. Also, too, on our YouTube channel, if you just type in ZBrush, Ask ZBrush, or ZBrush Beginner, you'll find a lot of cool stuff. We also have a Z Classroom, which I'm going to link right now. So if you're completely new and you're like, I have no idea what to even get started with, this is actually a really great website that we're currently updating at the time. But you can go ahead and start learning by following some tutorials today on how to get started with ZBrush. So this is a great way to go about it. Sometimes Dynamesh... Oh, hold on one second. I missed a lot of questions. Sorry about that. Any tips for adding keys to 3D printing? Yes, actually, I have quite a bit of keys. That's a little bit of a heavy question. So what I can do, I plan on printing this object soon, so I could definitely cover that more in depth, but there was a stream I did specifically. Let me see if I can look that up, because then you can kind of follow along with what I was doing. Let's see here. Pixel Logic, Ian. Boop, boop, boop. Let's see. There was a video I did with Ken Masters. I keyed him live on purpose. Let me see if I can find it real quick for you, because I would rather you go through. There's a lot to be had there that I think would be really beneficial for you to look at. Let me see if I can find it real fast. Man, how long ago did I do that? He did it so long ago. Okay, I did the Demogorgon. ZBrush, Demogorgon. I did Demogorgon a lot. Boop, 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 boop. Hold on 1 second. Okay. I believe, yes, this is it. Okay, perfect. So, just to showcase, this is the video I'm referring to. Let me copy and paste that right now. And this will actually get you started with that. Just watch this and kind of scrub through it. That'll help you out with keying specifically. When did you know you wanted to become a teacher? I started streaming, and I started realizing that there was a lot of people who were just really excited about wanting to learn how to do something in ZBrush. And I kind of just, I don't know, I just kind of did it. Like, I just kind of fell into it. I liked giving the knowledge. I used to teach other things. I used to teach martial arts. I used to teach machining. So I've always kind of been a teacher. But one of the things I learned early on when I would learn something is sometimes the best way to learn anything is to gain that information and knowledge and then immediately regurgitate it back to somebody, even if it's like, even if nobody's listening. Just regurgitate that back to them. And that's a great way for you to remember it as well. It's a technique that helps me learn random stuff from time to time. So I found it works best, and then people liked the way I taught, which that's always a plus, right? Like when somebody's like, "Hey, I like how you do it. I like how you break it down." So then I started kind of getting a little bit more serious about it, and then eventually, yeah, a good opportunity came up. What I learned when I learned I was good at teaching was when I was actually working at Funko, and I needed to be able to showcase some of the techniques I was introducing to the team, and they had me do a couple videos for everyone, and they really liked what I was doing. So yeah, a lot of little steps, but it's kind of a little bit of fell into it, kind of a little bit of that's what I do. It's what I do. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, let's reverse this real quick. Boop. Scale this up a little bit. All right, so okay. Hey Ian, the flipped inverts the mesh. But when you have a part of one side on another to another randomly, how do you make it stay the same side? Anna Paul. Oh, okay. Okay. Let me see if I understand you correctly. I want to make sure that I understand you the way I think I do. So you could tell me if I don't. So if I go ahead and say make adaptive skin, now I have this guy. And if I turn off double, I now have a mesh that is inverted and one that is not. So the way to get rid of this, when you use Z-sphere, to do any type of retopo work, and if your points were inverted and you didn't quite catch that in the beginning, which it's a little hard to, so don't worry about it, you have to delete a morph target that it automatically saves. So just delete your morph target. And then if you don't have a morph target, then from here on out, it's the same. What I do is I go to my poly groups and auto group. And from here, I'm going to make sure that double is turned off. And I'm going to go ahead and select the correct mesh and then hide it. And now I just go ahead and flip the one that's visible. It's only going to flip the one that's visible, not both. And now my mesh here is correct. I think that's what you were asking. Let me know if that's correct. And then I just copy and paste that back into my scene. Clay build-up with alpha off is your favorite brush, Loto? Yeah, that's a great one. Let's see. How much would I charge for this if a client asked me about it? It depends. That's not a charging is a interesting topic, and it's very situational. I live in the Los Angeles area, so when I do freelance work, I definitely charge LA prices. So depending on what I feel like what the client wants, I give them realistic times in which makes sense for them to know. So like, for example, I would say like, look, this would take me a couple days to turn around. If they had a concept, assuming they had a concept, I would quote them about a week if I was doing nothing but this and saying, look, in about 5 days, you're going to have something. I'm going to go ahead and do a simple block out sketch based on your concept, and then you're going to get a revision. And then I could turn that around really, really quickly just to go that the idea is right. But the back and forth with client is super important. And then from there, again, you know, before we even discuss the job, I'm going to tell the client exactly what they expect, how much time it's going to take, how long I think I can do it with being realistic, and also being with a mindset that I have a 9-to-5 job. So I'd only be able to dedicate a couple hours a night easily to it. So I would quote according to that, unless they needed it immediately, and then I was able to like work something out where it was negotiable. But I would tell them my price, and I spent a long time fine-tuning my price for freelance so that I'm satisfied with a job. They're satisfied with the job. They're satisfied with the pay that they're investing, because that's what it really is. It's an investment for your time. They're investing into me and my knowledge and years of experience as a sculptor, and they're hoping, right, that they're going to get what they're asked for. So you have to learn how to ask really clear questions with clients. So there's a huge conversation. We actually have this talk a lot in my Discord with artists because, again, it depends on where you are. You know, if the client is coming to me and they don't like because they say, hey, you know, you're in LA, but this guy in Brazil can do it for cheaper, or this guy in Japan will do it for more. Like, I can't quote those prices. I can only quote what puts food on my table, right? So you have to be realistic. Sometimes I've taken some pro bono work before. I don't do that often, but if I really believe in the project, I've done that before. But again, it just all depends. So that's a pretty heavy question, but again, I cover that fairly well. Let me see something real quick. Let me see if I can just get you a link. But I do cover that in my Discord, because that's a fun conversation. But it is very specific to you and the client you're trying to also book. Because if you're trying to book a super high-end client, I'll tell you right now, my prices are too low for them, even if the result is the same. Right, so like let's say I don't know, like if Johnny Depp came to me and was like, hey man, I want you to sculpt a likeness. Well, if I quote him $5,000 to get it done in a month and a half, he's gonna be like, that's it? Like, really? Like, you got to know your client too. Like, more than likely you're gonna see a difference there. So it depends. I don't fall on these conversations publicly because, again, I think there's too much to them to really do it right and do it justice. But hopefully it gives you a sense. What I usually tell people is Glassdoor, what a studio job would look like in your area, and quote based off of that as a starting point. So if a studio job does a character artist, which is what you want to do, and you do it for $65,000 a year in your area, average that out to what that would look like for you. You know, and then kind of start there and then fine tune it based on your needs. It's definitely a tricky conversation. Let's see here. Yeah, absolutely. I could share my story. Let me hit a couple technical questions first, and then I'll tell you where I came from. Let's see here. No, not a problem. Let's see. Lots of subsurface scattering to keep in mind with the texture of this one. Yep. Yeah, subsurface scattering is going to be super fun with this one. Can you tell us what that brush was again, used to make the bandages? I missed it because I was looking at armor. Oh, okay, it was Z-spheres actually. It It was a combination. For this one, what I did was I duplicated this mesh, and then I used slice curve to actually create the cuts. You'll be able to watch it back a little bit more in detail when this VOD hits, but just an example, I came up here, Control Shift, slice curve, and then I ended up slicing bandages like this, and then I ended up ZBrushing afterwards, and then picking the ones I wanted. You'll be able to go back more in depth because I covered that really well. What if you use these brush depth than infinity depth gravity stroke snap? Would that work way better with ease? It all depends on your process. Just, yeah, definitely try it. One of the things that I like to do with something like this actually is a lot of times, like what I will do is this can be kind of fun too. If I want to have this actually scaled up pretty accurately to the hands, I'll actually hide pretty much everything. I'll go in one of these and I'll grab the hand. I'm not going to show the teeth here. This might be kind of fun to do. And then I'm going to just go ahead and apply this. We'll go to polygroups, group by normals. I'm going to select the outer edges and then delete hidden. And actually maybe scale this up a little bit more. Maybe move this up a little bit like this. Maybe up like this a little bit. This one could be fun. I was actually going to try this, but what I could do is go to Dynamics, pop this over here, turn off Gravity, and then I'm going to turn on Contract. I'm going to go ahead and set my collision volume. And inflates, let's go 0.02 with a self collision, and allow shrink, recalculate all that, and then yeah, that just kind of destroys it, doesn't it? The amount is a little too high, so let's adjust that down to 0.05, recalculate, and let that shrink a little bit so it wraps a little bit better around the edges. And then from there, turn that dynamic thickness back on. If I get something like this, where this is kind of destroyed, this mesh is a little destroyed, I can actually smooth this down with smooth cloth. Say, yep, that's fine. Smooth cloth actually smooths edges, so you just got to be careful, but clean up some of those edges. Maybe do like a little bit of a relaxed smooth. That's really intense. I don't want it that intense. That'll contour a little bit better. That's one way of going about it. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to back it up just because I haven't decided, but that's a way to go about doing it. That's fine. Let's go here. Go back to V1. Yeah, when it comes to pricing, experience weighs heavy for sure. Absolutely. But but when they come back and say, why so much? When somebody says why so much, I usually, when it comes to pricing, if somebody's curious on why I'm charging so much, I just break down the whole process. And that's the other thing too I like to do. I like to give an itemized list on what it is they're gonna get for it. And it depends too. I mean, you know, it depends, but you know, at some point too, you have to be willing to say no to a project. You don't always have to be eager and take every job that comes through the table. But, you know, negotiation is key, and usually the price that gets negotiated is the first one that's said. But a lot of times too, like, it's crazy. There's so much, but again, yeah, there's a lot of experience. Pricing and freelancing, that gets interesting. Do I offer mentorships? At this time, I'm not offering any mentorships, but I have thought about it, yeah. For sure, absolutely. Back in the day, toy companies had a standard rate of sculpts that were paid by the inch. Oh, nice. But that went away a long time ago. Digital sculpting has no scale. Correct, yeah. And even if they're printing a project at a small scale, you are still sculpting the project pretty much like you would sculpt for a larger fixture, maybe a little less detail. Exactly. And that's the other thing too. I mean, you know, we're talking about like when you're going in with pricing and stuff like that, you know, there is an expectation that like, and that can be an argument where you could say, look, you know, like this hand, for example, a lot of detail will get lost in the printing phase for sure. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, you could tell your client, look, I know you're hiring me to do a mini. So I'm going to focus the final details based on that. But at any point in time, if you would like to possibly consider having a larger scale version of this, then we can negotiate and talk about the amount of details that we put in and where I focus a lot of my attention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I've had those conversations to where I was able to actually tell the client, you're going to get two versions. One that is kind of the overall detail looks good that would work for an, you know, 1/8 scale or 1/6 scale, and then your mini, it'll be simplified with purposeful details, and that's worked out well. I've had some clients happy about that. Okay, it just depends. Each conversation, here's the thing to remember: each conversation with every client as a freelance artist, you want to remember that it's a new conversation. Don't ever bring in old information to a new conversation. So whatever you quoted your last, you know, the last person, there is a possibility that that person is not going to work within that means. So you treat every conversation as if they're brand new and you don't know what the expected price is. You only know which, if they ask you what you're going to offer. I've negotiated my price down with the sole purpose that this client really wanted my work and was really happy to get my work. So I went ahead and adjusted to meet the needs. And I've literally had clients tell me I was too cheap. And I was like, oh, that's the first. So it just depends. Just depends. But yeah. I've got one more question for you, and I'll stop asking. That's okay. Ask away. It's fine. You've been very helpful. When I look online, I can't find the answer, and I keep seeing people use it. How to open that custom menu? What is the hotkey? So the hotkey is whatever you set it to be. I have set mine to 2. So I'm sure you've seen how to create a custom menu. So in order to have this custom menu pop up on screen like this, what I do is I come on up to my menu, and I hover over this little icon right here, which might be a little hard to see, so let me zoom in. This little icon right here. And then I press and hold Control-Shift, and I tap, press and hold Control-Alt at the same time. That's always fun. Yeah. So I press and hold Alt and Control, or Command and Option if you're on Mac. Click one time, and it's going to ask me to assign a custom hotkey. I press my hotkey, which in my case was 2, and now that's going to pop up every single time. So when you're moving around and then you hit 2, that will do that. That'll bring that menu on up, and then that's adjustable. But that's for me. I know artists that use 1. Some artists have like a custom side button they use. The hotkey portion is up to you. How long does it take to be good at hard surface? I think that depends on the person, but ultimately it just depends on the person. I would not consider myself a hard surface artist, but I definitely do hard surface work. So I just don't specialize in it. But ultimately, yeah, I would say just really depends. Okay. I'm bringing up here a single. I'm bringing up a single poly. This is going to be a strap that is digging out. And now I want to showcase something really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and mask off this side here. I'm going to mask off this section here so that I am just moving this one part. Turn off our dynamic. Let's grab this guy. I'm going to mask this section off and then invert that. So now I'm just moving that part right there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead, D for dynamic. I'm going to hold control. Are you not going to work for me? Maybe because it's a separate thing. Let me see. Let's isolate this. Let's come here. Let's go to split hidden. Let's actually add a secondary edge loop here real fast. It's probably why. Yep, I'm going to grab that right there. Now I'm going to mask this section off. Oh, okay. Never mind. We're going to do this a different way. I was going to try to duplicate it with the edge loop trick, but not working that way. So we're going to come through here, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag this out, kind of rotate this around. I'm going to turn off dynamic here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and add in some more edge loops. Turn this back on. This will be a mesh that we kind of just divide. That might be a little too much. Here, real quick, turn that off. There we go. Let's just mask this section right here. Let's move this. It's fine. Let's push this forward. Add in another edge loop. Bend this down. Just using the Z modeler for this. And now we can go ahead and bring this up and move this here. There we go. Tuck this in as if this is where the wrap is coming from. That's fine. It works. There we go. We could shape that the rest of the way. Maybe we'll tap right here. Right there. Let's rotate that. All right. Let's see. Hey, I have a question for you. Do you have any advice on how to rig faces? I actually don't do much rigging at all at this moment in time, so I would not be able to help you with that, as ZBrush doesn't deal with rigs per se. But moving around, I actually use Transpose Master for a lot of it. But yeah, I don't do a lot of rigging. Sorry. Do we need to know drawing to model characters? No, you don't. It helps if you know it, but no, you don't need to. I can draw, but I don't consider myself a 2D artist. But I can do it. It only helps because the more creative art outlet you have as an artist, honestly, the easier it is to just, kind of absorb that artistry knowledge, but it's not necessary. So you don't have to go out and try to learn how to become a 2D artist today. Just, if you know how to do it or you have interest in learning, that's cool. But if you don't, it's fine. Again, you don't have to. It's just something that, I do find it is a little helpful from time to time, but not necessary. Hopefully that helps. I'm going to go ahead and just put this up here a little bit more. Hit D again. And then just push this in. No problem. Would you say a display pen tablet is worth the price for 3D sculpting, or should you just stick with a normal tablet? Honestly, I would say it is 100% if you're able to test it out. It is different for everyone. I use both. I have a basic Wacom Intuos right now that I'm just using at work, on my work office, but on my home office, I do have Cintiqs. I'm a pretty tall person. I'm 6'4", so it's actually a little easier for me to work on a screen tablet than it is on an Intuos. But because I've had so many different setups in my teaching aspect of things, honestly, I can just kind of flip back and forth, and I just got used to both. But it's an investment either way. But some Some people don't like it, some people do. So what I say is, if you can, try it. If you know somebody who will let you utilize or borrow their Cintiq, give it a shot. But I would say if you're used to, like, let's say a basic tablet, if you're used to it and then all of a sudden you move to a display for the first time, there's a little bit of it's a little weird. It took me a little bit to get used to it. So it can be an odd experience. First time I did it with a 16-inch what was it, XP pen tablet, and honestly, like, I had buyer's remorse for about 2 days, and then the third day I was gonna go ahead and return it, and then I don't know, I woke up and I was like, oh, this is fine. So it was an odd experience, that's for sure. So if you can try before you buy, highly encourage. Not necessary though. I know a lot of really talented artists that stick with an Intuos. They save themselves money, where I've spent like $3 grand. So I guess transposer is better than... No, it's just the method I know. Rigging method is fine, but to get a really good rig outside of ZBrush, I'm just used to sculpting in asymmetrical pose a lot. So for me, I deal with toy statues, not rigging or games, so I just never really took the time to learn it. So it's whatever works best for you. Have you worked with both and prefer pen tablet over display tablet? Nice. Can't tell why exactly. It might just be more comfortable for you. You like the Cintiq for detail and the tablet for form work. Something about being able to see the whole thing when finding form is easier for me. Nice. Yeah, you know, I again, I agree. It's whatever is comfortable. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to push that in a little bit. Okay. Let's take a look. Speaking of forms and stuff, let's take a look at some stuff here, and let's see what we got going that makes even some sense in the world. What do we have here? Okay, this was our Z-sphere stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this guy. I feel like this tongue should be up in the mouth folder, and I'm confused on why it's not. So let's throw that there. Okay. All right, let's sculpt the worm. How much time do we got? We got 30 minutes. Let's sculpt the worm because we're going to have worms coming through this. And then, so let's actually come here. Let's control stamp that just to make that a little simple. And then here, let's actually come down here. Let's put this in a folder and let's call this hand. It was entrails, bones, and nails in there. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom. I'm going to insert. Let's insert a Z-sphere for our little wormy dealy. And let's make a worm. Let's solo this out. And let's work with just the Z-sphere. Grab this guy. We're going to move this straight up. How do these worms look? Nope, going about this the hard way. Based on how these worms look, and they're pretty gross, I'm actually going to delete this. I'm going to insert Z-sphere. Actually gonna, this kind of getting in the way. I'm going to post this sideways like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and... How do I want to do this? I think I just want to come here like that. And then, does this work here? Does this work? Ah, that will not work. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm literally just going to go ahead and gonna make this as easy as possible. Okay, Hit the transpose tool. This worm up a little bit. Actually gonna go ahead and go to transform. Gonna activate symmetry on both the X and the Z. So now I'm working on both sides. I'm gonna Dynamesh it. Let's Dynamesh. Yes, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of use the inflate brush. These worms are simple enough. There we go. Looks like the concept, pretty simple. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp that right in there. And then now we're going to go with a couple settings. So I'm actually going to go ahead and, if I want to try to control this mesh a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and break this up like this. Come on, give me something different. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and mirror and weld that. And now let's go stamp this point in history right up here at the top. We have a history stamp by hitting Control and then tapping that. Now we're going to go to ZRemesher and ZRemesh this. I'm going to do this pretty low. We don't need this much topology, so let's go 10 to start. Keep groups, drop that down, ZRemesh. Hello, hello, let's see here, blah, 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 blah. Has anyone had any issues with the 0.6 patch? Not at this. Got a frog in my throat. What I have to do to improve my sculpting? Practice. Honestly, I know that sounds super like cliche and just the thing that everybody says, but seriously, like practice. But how you practice is important. So what I would say is practice sculpting specific simple items. Start with like trying to make a cup, like your coffee cup. Try to make a cell phone shape. Try to make a human skull. Try to just practice every day for an hour of making a specific thing that is in line with what you want to sculpt. And do not worry about the details, but every single day, like so for 1 week, sculpt like coffee cups and mugs and just different mugs. But that's what you're doing for an hour every day for a week. And then you're going to move on to like sculpting a skull or sculpting a candle or sculpting a book or sculpting just a basic, wormy dealy like this. And after a while, you'll start just getting more comfortable with what you're sculpting. And then from there, you can go ahead and, as you're progressing through, try to always learn something new, try to challenge yourself just a little bit more. And eventually you'll get to a point where you're really happy with what's happening, and it won't seem so crazy or daunting. Okay, you see this right here? So when I get something like this, artifacts like this, I rebuild this. So I'll actually come here with ZModeler, hover over a face, say delete all polygroups, and I'm going to select these right here. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Okay? And then notice here how like I have some edge loops that don't quite line up. So I'm actually going to delete that edge loop right there. And then from here, I'm going to hover over this edge. I'm going to go to extrude. And I'm going to go to snap to surface. And then on the point aspect, I'm also going to go to snap to surface. That's for some reason not wanting to do what I wanted to do. Okay. All right, so you want to be that way? That's fine. Let's see what happens if I do that. Okay. I'm going to turn off. Just going to turn off my current symmetry here. That. No. Okay, when I get something like this happening here, I'm going to hover over this point here. So you're going to go ahead, come here on this point, hold here, and we're going to go stitch here to here. Then we'll go back to move, bring this down. Over here, I'm just going to do bridge this edge to this edge. Make that a different poly group. Now I'm going to go ahead and mirror on the z-axis so it's identical. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and divide up a couple times. And then I'm going to go ahead and project history, which is found under our subtool. Project history. That's that point in time. And that'll project back some of those details. And now this color of this worm is kind of gross. So let's just fill that with the base color. And now this hand, well, this hand we can do whatever we need to do to match the worm to the hand. Close that down. Let's turn off symmetry. Let's add this here. Scale this down. Now we got a bunch of worms. What's up, Steamworks? So we only got a few more minutes. Let me see if I missed any questions. Absolutely. Yeah, you like your XP fin display? Not when you're sculpting, but we use the second PC screen. Nice. Anyone have any? No. Can I get some help on an issue I'm currently having? Masking doesn't seem to work with posable symmetry. Is there something I'm doing wrong, or setting up a missing, or a setting you're missing? Okay, so posable symmetry. Let me see if I can help you here. Let me explain posable symmetry first, because there's a bit of a setup for that. So if you go to Tool and you come here to Posable Symmetry, I'm going to turn off Perspective, and we're just going to work with this male body here and delete all others. Yeah, delete others, and then just because it's on and I know it's there, delete. All right. So with Posable Symmetry, one axis needs to be completely true, needs to be completely symmetrical from one side to the other, one axis in general. So at any point in time, when using posable symmetry, you change one side of the mesh just a little bit. That could be enough to throw posable symmetry off. So, so when working with posable symmetry, the first thing I recommend that you do is you're first working on a super low res model like this guy, so that posing could be pretty simple. And then from there, you want to be careful with how you post stuff. But what I like to do, and it's been a little bit since I've done it, is with symmetry turned on, X activated, use posable symmetry. Now posable symmetry is activated, so I can go ahead and start masking stuff off. There should not be a setting in which you do stuff. Now, if I go ahead and, for example, turn off, now that I have posable symmetry here, let's see there, turn off symmetry on that aspect, and I go ahead and just go ahead and move this guy, right? This is where you want to be careful. So I went ahead and positioned that there, and then let's say I move his head. Okay, I've softened that for a little bit, send this here, come on down and then move his head. Okay, and then turn that back on. Come up here, my posable symmetry, it should still work. So even when I'm sculpting here, let's say I turn this back on and I start moving this position. right? It's pulling on the other side. So posable symmetry, again, you kind of want to set that up in a way that you know it's going to work first, and then you can adjust that as needed. I don't use it too often, but it's pretty cool to get main forms and stuff in there. But now it should be working. So see it there. So that's how you'd want to set that up. But like I said, if you had something like this, let's say you pose this. So let's come up here to posable symmetry and delete posable symmetry, and you had something like this. Well, the mesh on the right side to the left side is different. And if I smooth this down a lot, say something like this. If I come back up to posable symmetry, turn on activation, you know, this is where you can run into some issues. The mesh itself didn't change. The poly count from one side to the other didn't change. So theoretically, it should work like we are seeing here. But again, you want to make sure that it's truly symmetrical. So when in doubt, and if let's say you've made a change, what I would do is when you do mirror and weld, it's going to mirror and weld from left to right. If you're trying to set up for posable symmetry, before you activate posable symmetry, I would say mirror and weld on the x-axis so that it is 100% true on one axis, and then come up here to posable symmetry and use posable symmetry. The other thing to remember too is that if you subdivide, you could set another posable symmetry per subdivision. So every time you subdivide, you'll see here that there's another activation for that. If I step down, so you can change your posable symmetry based on the subdivision that you're on. So if you're on subdivision 1, you subdivide up to subdivision level 2, and now you want to go more details, you can reset that to that subdivision. So hopefully that helps. There's definitely, like I said, it's a setup. I find it really, really cool. Just, you know, there's some prep. So it's not necessarily a setting. It's just a prep. Mirror weld work from left to right for me. How do I make it mirror and weld from left side to right like you just did? Okay, so by default, what ZBrush will do is mirror and weld from this side to this side, right? But if you need to mirror and weld from, let's say, screen right to left, you can do that. And the way you can do that is actually ensure that nothing, and I mean nothing, is on the right side of stuff. So, for example, this right here. Oh, turn symmetry off, Ian. Okay, so this right here. If I were to go ahead and delete hidden, mirror and weld, there was information right here on this side. So I would need to make sure that all of these loops here get removed. Go ahead and delete hidden. And now let's see. Let's see here. And now mirror and weld. Nope, there's still something over there. So I need to move this over just a smidget. And now mirror and weld. Yeah, that's how you would do that. So mirror and weld typically, like I said, goes from screen left to screen right by default. But you can get it to go from screen right to screen left. It's just nothing can be on this side. Nothing at all. And then it will work. That's a little bit tricky though. So I typically will do that for like hands, etc., etc. But by default, it goes that way. No, you're good. Yeah. And is there a material setting that automatically process subsurface scattering? A material that automatically sets it? No, not a no. But the subsurface scattering is a way to go about going with subsurface scattering. And I've actually done a Ask ZBrush on this topic. So I'm going to send that to you on how to on kind of how it gets set up. But so I'm going to push that in there first. Bloop. Yeah, you could just turn the model around. You can, absolutely. You can also if you're feeling interested in life, what you can do is if there's no, let's say there's no subdivisions, deformation mirror, and that will flip that, and then you can mirror and weld, or you can come on up to Z plugin, subtool master, and then from there you can do mirror, and then you can mirror and merge, and then that can do that. Yeah, tons of ways to do that. Yep, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. Okay, so with setting up um, subsurface scattering, so I shared a link in the video on how you can go ahead and do that. But with subsurface scattering, like let's say I want to get him set up, there's a lot of little steps you could take for that. The main one is with the material. So if I come here with the material, and let me see if I remember. I actually built a material for this, but what I would do is I use a mix of materials. So first one is I'll use a double shade, and what a double shade will do, if we go to material and set this up and go to modifiers, you'll notice right up here at the very top we have S1, S2, S3, S4, but we only have S1 and S2 set up. So when you're setting up for subsurface scatter, there's a few different things that you could do, but definitely building a material is the way to go. So what I do is I go to skin shade 4 because I like the skin shade look. Go up to modifiers and I'll copy this, and then I'll come back to my double shade, and I'm going to go ahead to modifiers and I'm going to paste this. So now I have my skin shade here. Now there's little bubbles here. These little bubbles, a lot of people have asked about what those bubbles actually do. So it does one of two things. It either turns something on or off, or it actually does a different algorithm of what it's currently doing. So the bubble for this turns off that secondary shader. The bubble for, let's say, Dynamesh, it brings in another algorithm. That's the easiest way to explain it. So those are things to really think about. So we're going to go ahead and turn that one off. Now I'm going to turn on S2. So now I have this different setup. Now with skin shade, what was the material I used? Let me see if I can find it real quick. I think it was under quad shaders. Nope, wasn't under quad shaders. Was it soft plastic? Ah, there it is, soft plastic. So here, I went ahead and copied my soft plastic. I go back to my double shade. And now in this one, I go ahead and I paste this. So now I have these stacked materials, right? Now, you can modify this however you would like to, but what I will end up doing is adding in some reds and maybe some pinks here. And then I will adjust the specular, the ambience, the diffuse until I get something that I really, really like. And then with this one turned on, there'll be a combination of the two that's in there, right? And then the specular, of course. Now, you're going to want to adjust and play with all this stuff. Maybe a little bit too bright on the ambient. Diffuse a little bit. I actually drop a subsurface. Oh, let me reset that one. There we go. I actually dropped a subsurface scatter material in there. Now, this isn't true subsurface scatter right now until we actually get to the mixer, which is under the modifier. So once you set up your two here, then from there you want to go to your mixer and you want to turn subsurface scatter on. Okay? And then from there, you want to go to render. You want to go to render properties and turn on subsurface scatter. And then you're going to start to see that you're getting a different effect. If I were to turn this down to 0 and render out again, it's okay. Render that back up. Turn that back on. And now you're getting a different effect. And so now you want to play with these back and forth. That video that I shared, go ahead and go through there because there's a lot of different stuff. But it takes some time to set that up. You can also go to your light. And under light properties, you can turn on subsurface scatter. So then the subsurface scatter is being affected from your light as well as your material. So those are things that you could set up from there. But you'll want to make sure that you have subsurface scatter turned on. An easy effect that I kind of do to kind of cheat a subsurface scatter is actually do with a wax preview. And I don't even mess with this here per se. Let's just get like skin material, for example. Let's go skin shade just for the sake of argument, right? What I will do is I will then, under material, go to wax modifiers, and I'll adjust this wax modifier up to like 10, 11 with a little bit of a Fresnel. Render that out, and then under render properties, turn on that wax preview. And with my ambient occlusion turned on with a little bit of BPR, say 2000, that might be a little low, but that'll be fine. So you get a little bit more of a sense of depth. So, but with the subsurface scatter, check that video out. That'll help you out a lot. How much time do we have? Okay, we only have a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to have to go. So I'm going to take one more question. Said all does the work match. Let's figure that if I try to mask by hand, let's say, doesn't mask. That's really interesting, Alfred. If I set it up well, it just seems to mask symmetrically once you figured it out. Blah, blah, blah. Turn off symmetry and try to mask that way. But if you, okay, so it sounds like your posable symmetry is broken. It sounds like it's working, but it's misreading some mesh. So mesh got changed somewhere, and what I would recommend is that if you can go back to the original model that you did before, where they were like in T-pose, I would say then cap that posable symmetry. You can turn off and on the symmetry as you work with posable symmetry, because once it's established to the model, it won't turn. When you turn off symmetry, you're just working in that one area. Turning it back on will reactivate it. The thing to remember is that if you have a mesh change, meaning like your count changes, so say you have 50 polygons on one side and now you have 51 on the other side, that's when it's going to break. I will admit it is a little testy. It takes a little bit to get it right, but once you understand it, it will help out. So I would say start over, mirror and weld that, then reset your posable symmetry, and then try from there to do that. Hey, Forky Knight, welcome in. I'm actually getting ready to leave, but this is what I was working on. We got some worms over here that I'm going to be adding in and manipulating. We built it. But I'm actually going to be going here in just a minute. So we had one more question I saw that I thought would be good to answer, which is how do I make a thin mask over a face? So let's go ahead and go do that. So I'm going to stamp this here just so we can admire the beauty that it is and work with this face right here. Okay, so to make a mask, you're going to love this. I guarantee it. First things first, isolate the head from the rest of the body. This is always a good practice. So just go ahead and just isolate this, and then, you know, split it or delete hidden, whichever works. Now from here, assuming you don't have polygons whatsoever, assuming you got this going on, you want to make a mask. The easiest way to do it is to, let's go ahead and make a nice little robin mask. Mask this section off. Now, actually, what I would recommend doing, and this is important, your topology and the cleanliness of your topology matters. So this is where I would say duplicate your subtool. Boop. And then I would actually, what I would do here is, did I have dynamic temperature turned on? No, I don't. I would actually divide this up a little bit. Something like that. And then I would delete lower. So I have a much denser mesh. The reason for that is that it's going to capture my mask a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and do something like this. And maybe come through here. Boop. Through it like that. Okay. So just something. What happened? What happens, man? What happened? Okay, here, hold on. I don't know what happened with my mesh. Hold on 1 second. It's pretty funny. Let's see here. Let's go to polygroups, auto groups. Okay, we never get something like this. You know what we're gonna do? Yeah, we're just gonna. I think I know what happened. I did that whole like mirror and weld thingy. Yeah, that's fine. Let's start over. As Ian gets in the habits of breaking stuff. News at 11. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and split this off. All right, there we go. Gonna delete hidden. Yeah, get rid of those layers. Delete, delete. Okay. Here, just grab that guy. Delete hidden. Okay, great. So I would, like I said, I would subdivide this up a few times. Okay. Maybe from there, just duplicate that head and then get rid of your subdivisions. Delete it. I'm going to show you the two ways to do it. But either way, this is going to capture your mask really, really well. So let's say we have something like that. Try to make it as... The perfectionist in me is like freaking out on this mask, but whatever. Okay, so I have something like this, right? Now you can do one of two ways with this. You can either do yourself a favor and Control W and get a nice clean poly group, and then go to deformation and mask polish by groups, and that will clean that up really well. And you can actually isolate this, and then you can split hidden, and then you can ZBrush. That's one way to go about doing it. The other way that you can go about doing it is with this mask selected, you can actually go here to subtools, and this is where I would say too, with symmetry turned on, go ahead and cut your eye holes, right? Something like that. And go to extract, and then you can do with thickness or you can do without. The difference is with thickness, you're actually going to be dealing with a wall thickness. So if I hit thickness and say extract, right, that's going to demonstrate what that looks like, and then I got to find a thickness that makes sense. So maybe 0.002 and say extract again, and that gives me something a little bit more what I want. And then I can say accept. Or what I like to do is go with 0 thickness, extract and accept, because this is actually going to give me a single-sided geometry. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and under polygroups, auto groups, and delete any little bits that might be floating around by hitting delete hidden, which that will be under geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. And then now from here, I will just go ahead and ZBrush this. So I will come under geometry, ZBrusher, and then I will say, yeah, detect edges, and then go ahead and ZBrush. And now it's going to take my mesh and it's going to go ahead and at 5,000 points, it's going to do a pretty good job finding what I want. Maybe go half and do this a few times until I get something pretty low. We'll see how low we can go. How low can you go? That's pretty good. And now with my mask here, just take my Z modeler brush, and then I go ahead and hover over a edge, and then I'm going to go ahead and say Q mesh polygroup all, and I'm going to go ahead and scale that up. And now I have something with some thickness. And you can do that with any type of mask, and that will match according to the face. So if you have a scan of yourself, so this is where you can have a nice, good starting spot. You can also work with a single-sided geometry here. So if we solo this out, come here, turn off symmetry. With single-sided geometry, what you could do is actually hold control and just kind of inflate this single side up. Get a lot of your details or your shapes built in, and then from there, what I would do is then push N. So then what will happen with the Z modeler is when you push in, you're just flipping the normals. You didn't break it, I promise. So display properties, flip normal, and now you have something like that. So nice clean, and it follows the contour of the person's face. So tons and tons of ways to go about doing it. You can use all sorts of tools, clip, curve, mask. You can isolate. It's all up to you, but I like the extract method. It's one of the best. Oh, hello, Mr. Get out of there. Get out of there. What's this guy? Get out of here. Cool. All right, all right, all right. Yeah, sorry you're having problems with that, Alfred. Hopefully you solve that. If the issue does continue, you know, or maybe there's something I just didn't miss, that's a problem that would be interesting to try to look at. Like I said, I did share the link to my Discord. You could throw that problem in there, or oh, that's not the link. You could also throw the problem in the ZBrush Discord, which is in the description below, typically. So, and the clicker technique is great. Nice, perfect, James. You know, Funko, how long did you have to complete a sculpt? It depends. I had per sculpt based on the project, usually a couple days to turn something around, which it wasn't too bad, you know. But 8 hours a day, so you know, eight to 10 hours, you can pretty much have something. Plus, we worked with base meshes all the time, so it just made that drop process faster. And they hand you a concept, so pretty much the only thing you need to do is translate that concept, and then from there you send it in. So yeah, usually about a day or two turnaround for a pop. It's about average. Awesome. All right, everybody, that's going to go ahead and cover it for today. Thank you, everybody, for the wonderful questions. Hopefully you enjoyed the progress. This was a lot of fun. I'm going to mess with this model a little bit more off, but I won't do anything you didn't see. So I will be adding some more straps and stuff like that, but we'll get to the detailing phase next week. That's Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is where I'm going. We went a little bit over, but that's okay. I love answering these questions. You guys are awesome. So that being said, I will catch all of you next week, Wednesday, and enjoy the rest of your day. Happy ZBrushing, and I'll catch you later. Bye, everybody.